So, what makes a nation a nation? Well, in Federalist number 42, James Madison is going to answer that question rather directly, because he's going to explain here that unity isn't a feeling, it's actually a structure. And without the powers to regulate things like foreign affairs and commerce and also citizenship, the United States would remain just a name and not a nation. I'm Matt Haskell. I'm a high school history and civics teacher, and we're taking a trip through all the Federalist Papers, one by one, in order, all the way up to number 85, and here we are, the answer to everything, right? Number 42. So Madison is going to continue his analysis in this essay of congressional powers. He's going to turn from the general idea of federal strength that we saw back in 41 to the specific responsibilities that define sovereignty. And he groups these powers into two rather broad categories. One is that those that affect the nation's external relations, and the second one is those that affect its internal harmony among the states. And both, Madison is going to argue, are essential for independence and also order. Now, Madison's main claim is that the Articles of Confederation failed because the states handled these powers separately, which led to confusion and corruption and international embarrassment. And he wrote, "The want of a general power over foreign commerce has produced many disadvantages and embarrassments. Under the Articles of Confederation, the United States couldn't speak or act with one voice, and now the Constitution gives that voice to the Congress." Now, Madison begins with powers that define sovereignty abroad, like regulating commerce with foreign nations, or establishing rules of naturalization, defining and punishing crimes on the high seas, and then finally declaring war and making peace. And he's going to point out that these powers are not luxuries, that they're actually basic tools of nationhood. I guess I should say statehood, but we get confused, it seems like, in the United States about nations versus states. I do a whole unit with this on this with my government kids when we start out the year, but still, it just doesn't seem to click. But anywho, that's a whole other thing. Now, without these basic tools, each state could form its own treaties or its trade laws, which would then invite chaos and conflict. And he writes again, if we are to be one nation in any respect, it clearly ought to be in respect to other nations. So, Madison will then spend much of the essay defending the Commerce Clause in Article 1, and that is the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states. And under the Articles of Confederation, some states imposed tariffs on their neighbors, looking at you, Virginia. Now, others went on to undercut each other in foreign trade, and the result was the beginning of economic warfare between Americans. Now, the new Constitution, Madison's going to argue here, ends that madness because a single commercial policy gives the Union fairness, strength, and dignity. Now, Madison is then going to turn in the essay to a practical problem, which is citizenship. This isn't topical at all. But anyway, under the Articles of Confederation, each state set its own rules for naturalization. A person could become a citizen of one state and instantly gain the privileges of all the states, even if the other states would never have accepted them. And so the Constitution fixes this inconsistency by giving Congress one uniform rule of naturalization. So it's about fairness, not necessarily control, which then ensures that becoming an American means the same thing everywhere. Now, of course, the 14th Amendment will also add another nuance to this, but we'll get to that at a later date. Now, Madison is also going to address crimes like piracy and offenses against international law of nations. And he notes that these crimes can't be handled by individual states because the oceans belong to all of humanity. And so a unified response protects not just commerce, but also America's honor abroad. Now, Madison is going to go on and turn inward here when he looks at internal powers, especially interstate relations. And so he's going to turn inward toward, to the powers that preserve peace between the states. And he emphasizes that disputes over boundaries and trade and fugitives must be handled federally, or else they risk becoming causes of war. Now, he praises the new system for banning the slave trade after 20 years and for ensuring that free movement between states doesn't destroy, justice or order. Now, he is rather cautious in tone, but Madison's words will go on and plant seeds that will become later debates, especially about human rights and federal moral authority. Now, if we look at Madison's logic throughout this particular essay, his chain of reasoning, or the summary that some of you students are looking for, well, we could say that first, the articles failed because states acted independently in national matters. And then the Constitution unites those powers under Congress for consistency. Then external powers like trade and war go on to define sovereignty. Internal powers like citizenship and dispute resolution will preserve unity. And then finally, the fifth point, a federal structure ensures harmony at home and respect abroad. So there it is, Federalist number 42 in 5 easy steps. Now, Madison's tone then in this particular essay here is rather lawyerly, but it does remain optimistic. He's kind of laying the groundwork for a system that makes the United States equal to any European power. And his confidence isn't boastful. It's like he's building something. It's almost architectural. That's terrible. But anywho, he's describing the beams and like the pillars that kind of make freedom structurally sound. I guess that's what I'm trying to say here. Now, his moral dimension is one of, well, it's more of insight, and that's that liberty requires law and law requires order. And so the Constitution's new powers don't actually weaken the states. They protect them from destroying one another. And so he reminds the readers of the essay that unity is not uniformity. It's cooperation through principle. And so, how do we apply this to now? What's the modern echo here? Well, every modern debate about immigration and trade and federal authority, it echoes the logic that Madison had from Federalist 42. And his message is rather clear. It remains clear that you can't have liberty without order, and you can't have order without shared power. Now, our takeaways from this essay. One is that external powers like commerce and defense define our sovereignty. But two, internal powers like citizenship and justice preserve unity. Then three, the Constitution's balance of both makes the Union both strong and fair. Now, Federalist number 42 is Madison's blueprint. I use blueprint a lot, but it is a blueprint for coherence. It's a vision of how separate states could act as one nation without losing their individuality. And it's the moment that America becomes more than an alliance. It becomes a republic with a single voice. So, once again, I'm Matt Hasquin, and this is another one of those things that we should just know by being alive. And if in this particular episode it helped you see how Madison kind of transformed the independence of the states into more unity, please share this or repost or follow me, and then come back, because I'll be moving on to Federalist number 43 probably tomorrow. And this is where Madison is still here with us, and he's going to examine the powers that guard the Union's survival itself. This is from defending the Union all the way, not the Union, but the Constitution, from defending the Constitution all the way to admitting new states to the Union. Hey, thanks for hanging around and watching. I know this was a long one.